Emily Dickinson, the enigmatic poet of eternity, full biography and untold life story. The woman behind the veil of silence. There are lives that unfold like open books. Their chapters read aloud to the world. And then there are lives like Emily Dickinson's, a life hidden in shadows, written in whispers, preserved in fragments, and only revealed in its brilliance long after the voice that created had gone silent. Emily Dickinson, one of the greatest poets in the history of literature, never sought fame, rarely left her home, and lived much of her life in near-complete seclusion. Yet her words pierced the centuries with unrivaled power. She wrote about death as if she had known it intimately, about eternity as if she had glimpsed its face, about love as though it was both torment and salvation. This is a story of Emily Dickinson, a woman of contradictions, an introvert who spoke to eternity, a recluse who reached across time, a hidden genius who transformed literature forever. Seeds of Solitude, Childhood in Amherst. Emily Elizabeth Dickinson was born on December 10, 1830, in the quiet college town of Amherst, Massachusetts. She was the second of 3 children born to Edward Dickinson, a stern lawyer and politician, and Emily Norcross Dickinson, a woman who retreated often into silence and melancholy. From the very beginning, Emily was sensitive, observant, and deeply attuned to the world around her. While Amherst bustled with small-town rhythms, Emily's imagination was drawn inward. She loved the garden, where she observed the smallest details of flowers and insects with awe, details that would later bloom into the metaphors of her poetry. The Dickinson household was one of prestige and discipline. Edward Dickinson was determined that his children would embody the values of Puritan New England: faith, duty, and hard work. Emily absorbed the stern environment, but also resisted it. Beneath her father's shadow, she quietly began developing her own inner voice, a voice that would not be confined by social or religious expectations. The scholar who questioned everything. At Amherst Academy, Emily thrived. She excelled in subjects as varied as literature, botany, Latin, geology, and mathematics. Books were her escape and her weapon. She devoured Shakespeare, the Bible, and the works of English poets like John Keats and Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Her hunger for knowledge was boundless, and so was her restlessness. In 1847, she enrolled at Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, a rare opportunity for a young woman in her time. It was here that Emily encountered the intense religious revivalism sweeping New England. Students were pressured to declare themselves saved, hopeful, or lost. Emily, when confronted, placed herself in the category of undecided. She refused to bow to the expectation of blind faith. This act, seemingly small, was revolutionary for a young woman of her era. It became clear Emily would not live her life by the rules of others. She would question everything: faith, love, mortality, even eternity itself. The Retreat, a life indoors. By her late 20s, Emily Dickinson had begun the great withdrawal that would define her life. Gradually, she stopped attending social gatherings, avoided visitors, and finally retreated into her family home almost entirely. By her 30s, she was rarely seen outside and often refused to greet guests face-to-face. Her family was puzzled. Her neighbors whispered. Some thought her fragile, others eccentric. But for Emily, this retreat was not a surrender. It was a chosen act. The solitude gave her the silence she needed to listen to the whispers of her own mind. She created a daily rhythm, writing at a small table, tending to her beloved garden, and communicating with the outside world through letters. Clad in her signature white dress, she moved like a ghostly presence through the halls of the Dickinson home. Yet within her private world, she was alive with intensity. The Hidden Genius, Poems Born in Silence. Between the walls of her upstairs room, Emily Dickinson composed over 1,800 poems. They were not written for the acclaim of the world, but as a form of necessity, as if writing them was her only way to breathe. Her poetry was unlike anything her contemporaries had ever known. At a time when poetry was expected to be orderly, rhymed, and predictable, Emily broke all conventions. She used dashes instead of punctuation, unexpected capitalization, and condensed language that felt explosive in its brevity. She wrote of life and death, of God and eternity, of love and despair. Her imagery was startling, comparing hope to a bird, eternity to a house, death to a kindly carriage driver. She stripped existence down to its core and revealed truths that few dared confront. Her poems were bound not in books, but in small handmade fascicles, stitched together with thread. They were kept in drawers, envelopes, and boxes, hidden, waiting. The Letters, a world beyond the walls. Although Emily rarely left her home, she was never fully cut off from the world. Through letters, she maintained deep, passionate connections with those she trusted. Her correspondence with her sister-in-law Susan Gilbert Dickinson, with the critic Thomas Wentworth Higginson, and with friends like Samuel Bowles, reveals the depth of her intellect and the intensity of her emotions. These letters, often poetic themselves, blur the line between friendship and something more. To Susan, in particular, Emily wrote with a rawness that suggested an intimacy beyond convention. While scholars debate the nature of these relationships, one thing is clear. Emily's heart was as restless as her pen. Through letters, she extended herself to the world, even as her body remained confined within the walls of Amherst. The dance with death, obsession, and inspiration. No theme recurs in Emily Dickinson's poetry as insistently as death. To her, death was not merely the end of life. It was an intimate presence, a constant companion. She described it with calm, even with civility, as in her famous poem, "Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me." This fascination was not morbid curiosity, but a profound meditation. Emily lived in a century where death was ever present. Epidemics, war, and fragility of medicine ensured that loss was part of daily life. She herself experienced the deaths of close friends, mentors, and family members. Her poetry transformed grief into insight, fear into revelation. For Emily, death was not an enemy, but a doorway into eternity. The silent years, illness, isolation, and decline. In the later years of her life, Emily's world grew even smaller. She rarely left her upstairs room, often speaking to visitors through closed doors. Illness plagued her family. The deaths of her father, mother, and nephews shook her deeply. She herself began to suffer from Bright's disease, a kidney condition that slowly weakened her. Still, she wrote, her poems becoming even more compressed, enigmatic, and piercing. On May 15, 1886, Emily Dickinson died at the age of 55. The cause was kidney disease, compounded by years of fragile health. At her funeral, her coffin was carried to the garden she had loved so dearly, surrounded by white flowers, in a quiet procession befitting her life of silence. The Discovery, a Genius Revealed. Emily Dickinson died unpublished, virtually unknown outside her circle of family and friends. During her lifetime, fewer than a dozen of her poems appeared in print, and those were heavily edited to fit conventional styles. She had never sought recognition, and recognition had never found her. But after her death, her sister Lavinia discovered the hundreds of fascicles Emily had hidden away. In them lay a treasure trove, nearly 1,800 poems of startling originality. At first, editors tried to correct her work, stripping it of its unique punctuation and irregularities. But as time passed, her true voice emerged. By the mid-20th century, she was recognized not as a curiosity, but as a literary giant. Today, Emily Dickinson stands alongside Shakespeare and Homer as one of the most studied poets in the world. The voice of eternity. Emily Dickinson's legacy is not in her fame during life, but in the immortality of her words. She reshaped poetry, opening doors for modernism, confessional poetry, and new ways of seeing language. Her refusal to conform became her strength. She taught the world that silence can speak louder than sound, that brevity can cut deeper than eloquence, and that truth can be revealed in fragments. Her words remain timeless. Forever is composed of nows. And so it is. Emily Dickinson's life may have been quiet, but her poetry roars across eternity.